Hey everybody, we're back for another video. I think that I'm super pumped about this one today. We have our Director of Operations, Noemie Touchette, with us to talk about a little bit of farming philosophies, a little bit of gardening. So if you haven't gotten those plants in the ground yet, or if you just got them in, you probably have a bunch of questions. If you have more questions coming out of this video, please do leave a comment down below or send us a DM on Instagram. We'd love to get your questions and we can add them to future videos, or we can just direct message you back and let you know some of the answers. So love to get some more feedback, and welcome, Noemie.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. So Noemie, can you give us a bit of a update on what it is you do at Northern Lights Estate Winery? You are the Director of Operations, so you've got a big title and a lot of tasks and responsibilities. So maybe tell everyone a little bit about what you do.
So maybe we'll start from the beginning. 6 years ago already, I was hired to be the farm manager to start the orchard at the winery. And months and years passed. Over the winter, I got introduced to winemaking as well to keep me busy during those cold months, and I really enjoyed it to see the fruit of my labor being transformed into amazing product. And after 3 years of working outside as the farm manager and inside as a cellar hand, I became the Director of Operations. So as of right now, I oversee from the ground to the bottle. So I have the orchard team working on the shrubs and the landscaping and at the couple farms. And I'm also overseeing the cellar work, the winemaking, and I could be considered the wine master at this moment. Yeah, that's what I do. So it's a full-time work, and in the spring, it's there could be two of me, but yeah, and now we have that great project of Foreman Flat, so that is going to be very interesting and very exciting to increase our production to a very large orchard in the north.
Yes. Yeah, no, it's really exciting. So, I mean, for those people who don't know, we have our manufacturing area right now where we're producing, we can produce almost 10,000 cases, up to 12,000 cases of wine on an annual basis. We're in the works of planning a new facility that will actually probably triple production over the next few years. So in order to triple production, we need to grow a lot more fruit. So right now, Noemie's managing 2 farms, and we're adding a 3rd farm in Prince George, which is an additional 40 acres we bought about a year and a half ago, cleared last year, and are planting this year. So that in conjunction with the farm that we have here on the winery site, one near Prince George Airport. We also lease farms in Quesnel and in the Lower Mainland in the Chilliwack region. So Noemie basically, from like a science and art perspective, takes everything from the time it goes into the ground to the manufacturing process right to where it gets into the bottle ready for you. So wow, that is a lot going on right now. Foreman Flats is obviously a big project. Maybe tell us a little bit about what we're doing out there this year.
Yes, we have 10 acres of ready ground for planting this year. So last year we tilled the ground, we planted a cover crop, and now this spring we will be able to plant I've ordered for 6 acres of fruits. So we're going to concentrate on Haskap, Saskatoons, and blackcurrant this year. And then next year we should be adding an acre of rhubarb. Yes.
Wow. So that orchard, like, and because it was treed when we first bought it, right? And so what were kind of the steps that you had to take to make sure that it was the right property for us for growing these fruits?
The drainage was my main concern. We were looking all over in like south of town, and we looked at a few properties on Pineview, but living in Blackburn or in Buckhorn, I know that clay soil and spring thawing creates a lot of flooding, and we decided to go for a sandy loam, which drains very well and is the perfect soil for fruit production. That was my main thing.
Nice.
After that, because it was a treed area, we had to log, and then we're trying with the cover crop to replenish the soil a little bit, add some organic matter and some nutrients because those shrubs are going to be there for 10, 15, 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to make sure that the ground is healthy prior to planting.
Great. And that was on, this one is also on the river. It's on the Fraser River. So if you're in Richmond, we could technically hop in the river and flow right down to you. But is there something about like, obviously both of our two main orchards are on the river. Is there something about being around a river that kind of creates better soil conditions, or?
Obviously, hundreds and thousands and millions years ago, the river was much wider, and that's why there is all that sand and silt deposit from the riverbank that used to be there a long time ago. Yeah, that was that's the main reason why growing along most of the growing areas in Canada, in Quebec or in the Lower Mainland, it's all based on or proximity of a larger river. Because of that.
Right, so you get less clay. You might get a little bit of rock for drainage. There used to be kind of the riverbed gravel, and then you get more organic matter because it's obviously lots of water and it's brought lots of fertility into the ground.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sand, loam. Yeah, this is all good growing conditions.
Awesome. So this year we're adding the plants. We have to do irrigation. We need to do fencing. What other things are you going to be looking for in the first year that you could see could be potential problems down the road that we want to address early?
Before planting anything, because we're along the river, there's also a lot of wildlife, and we want to make sure that we're not blocking their path to keep going along the river. So when we're going to be doing our fencing, we want to make sure that we will give them a lot of access to their fields, or that they're ranging fields. So that will be, otherwise, if we don't do that, if we put our fence exactly where they're usually walking, then they're gonna want to jump over, or they're gonna get hurt jumping into it, and so that will be an important thing to consider when we're putting our fence. As far as irrigation, everything, we've drilled a well last year, and everything is drip irrigation to minimize disease for the plants and also to minimize water usage. That's always a big concern. In the spring, we have too much water, but in the summer, we don't have as much. So using as much or as little as we can is ideal.
So what would be the different types of irrigation for those who aren't really familiar what drip irrigation is? What are the varieties or the choices that you could make in a farm or a garden setting?
So obviously for us, we're going to be irrigating 10 acres. So it's a large system. But for any homeowners, places that you can purchase for perhaps under $200, you can have irrigation for your backyard. You can go to Home Depot, you can go to Lee Valley. Right now, Lee Valley is having some free shipping, so that would be an interesting time for you to get your system. And you can create it from your tap. You probably have a tap on the back of your house, and you can hook up everything directly. You can purchase a little timer, so that way you don't have to turn on your system every time. Often what people are doing with irrigation is that they irrigate too often. So when you irrigate, you probably want to do it once or twice a week. Even in the warm days, you want to water less frequently, but longer. So that way, all your water is well saturated, and then it will drain slowly, and your plants will will their roots are going to grow longer and deeper, and to be able to reach that water. If you irrigate less, but or less time, but more often, then the roots are going to stay shallow, and as soon as there's a drought, then they will die because they are not used to go search for the water deep down into the ground. Same thing for your grass. If you water every day, your grass will have shallow roots, and then will not be able to survive a drought. So yeah.
Hmm. Okay, so just I want to come back to the types of irrigation just a little bit for those who don't know. So the
Yes, sorry.
no worries, all good. So drip irrigation, and that was really good information. Drip irrigation is when you have a kind of a perforated pipe that travels along the plant and around the plant, and then it just kind of drips water right near the roots. So it's not coming from above. It doesn't go on the leaves of the plant. And then there's, of course, like there's the spray irrigation, which is what I use in my house for my wife's garden, where we actually like spray from above. So is there other types of irrigation, and when would they know which one to use?
Mm-hmm. So there's also soaker hoses. So
Mm-hmm.
instead of being a perforated tube, because you have gap in between. So let's say you're growing lettuce or carrots. If you irrigate just every foot, then the carrots in between might not get as much water. So you might be interested in having a soaker hose, which is kind of it's a perforated or hose that will allow water all along that tube. So that could be an option as well. If you're, let's say like last year, if you're using overhead or little sprinklers, it was already so wet. Your plants, if you're wetting the foliage, you can get it can cause mildew
Mm.
more frequently because the leaves are going to be always wet. Also, the slugs. Um, Last year there was a lot of slugs, and
Oh yeah,
every
they
every
ate all
gardener,
my zucchinis. There was nothing left.
yeah, they love everything: lettuce, peas, beans. They will love it. So if you're just wetting the ground, not that it's going to help with the slugs, but at least your plants are not going to be wet all the time, and perhaps it will minimize disease, especially.
Okay, so ideally we want to use either the soaker hoses or the drip tape irrigation, so that we can water from below rather than from above. And of course, there are maybe times where like grass or something where it's like heavily dense, that it makes more sense to go from above, or where there's less leaves necessarily, that kind of thing.
Yeah, or if your garden is in a very sunny area and you know that it will dry quicker, so your overhead irrigation is fine, but do it in the morning. That way your plant will have time to dry during the day, and
Hmm.
it will not be so wet 24/7. Or in the cold times like evenings, that's when it's cold and wet, then it's when the diseases can multiply more.
Awesome.
Mhm.
So let's keep on the gardening train there, because I know there's a lot of gardeners that might be watching right now. What are a couple of kind of like hacks or tips when it comes to gardening? Things that maybe you didn't know the few years you were gardening, but you kind of learned later on that just made things so much easier. I think one of them for sure is having irrigation versus actually having to go and water every day. Although some people just like the activity of watering every day. But what are a couple of other ones?
I would say, but especially for the north, uh, or perhaps even in the Okanagan or in the Lower Mainland, often people will say, "Oh, I'm going to build a greenhouse." But if
Mhm.
you're working or and you're not home, once it gets warm, that greenhouse needs to be ventilated, needs to be open.
Mm.
So you don't need a greenhouse to grow a lot of vegetables. There's so many things that you can plant directly in the ground that you don't have to start too early indoors, because starting tomatoes and squash and cabbages, you need a lot of space and you need lighting in your house before you do that. So just having some raised boxes or straight in the ground, you don't necessarily need a raised box, because then if you build a raised box, you'll have to import some, or you'll have to purchase soil. As if you have a decent, you can turn your lawn into a garden, then it's less investment because you don't have to buy wood and build those raised box. Yes. So sometimes there's a lot of items that people think they need, but growing food can be very economical and much easier than they're thinking.
Okay, no, that's really interesting. So it doesn't have to be very expensive, and you don't need a lot to get started. You don't need the big greenhouses. You can start things inside and then move them outside. If you got a patch of lawn that maybe you don't use, just taking that space and using it. How would you kind of prepare and test the soil? So let's say that they are using some of their lawn. What are the things that they're looking for when they're preparing a garden from like just regular soil in their yard?
From scratch, yeah. First of all, if you're turning your lawn into a garden, don't just rototill the grass, because the grass will likely come back very quickly. So try to get rid of that first, the top layer for the roots, and to get rid of it, and that will help you reduce a lot of weeding hours. Then if it's brand new, you probably want to somehow turn it with a rototiller or with just a shovel. Then you probably want to do a soil test just to see what nutrients is in your soil. There's some tests that can be purchased from Lee Valley or from ArtNap or any garden center. These have medium results, but if when I started gardening in my backyard, I would always assume that there's never enough nitrogen. So the soil that I had, I wasn't doing a soil test because those little kits never gave me a good result. You can send your soil to a lab, but you'll have to pay about $60. So perhaps it's okay. If you do want to do your soil test, there's Element, and there's also, they're mainly in the Lower Mainland. I can't think about the other one.
There's another one in Edmonton. If you guys have a question about where you can actually send your soil to get testing, feel free to just send us a DM in either Instagram or Facebook, and we can get that information for you.
Yes.
So what are I'll tell you, it's really scary for me thinking about adding nutrients because I have no idea. So they want to test, but what are the main things that they're looking for? What are like the 3 or so main ingredients they're looking for, and then what would you add if needed, or subtract if needed for your soil?
You have to look for, when you purchase a bag of compost or a fertilizer, there's your 3 numbers. The first one is nitrogen, N. The second one is P for phosphorus, and K is your third one. This is potassium. And often, most soils are going to be low in nitrogen. If you buy some well-composted manure and you add that to your compost or to your garden with like maybe half an inch, and then you turn it not too deep, you just leave it at the surface or 2-3 inches deep, then if you do that every year, then your garden should be giving a really good result. Yeah.
That's great. So nitrogen's the main one. Is there anything sometimes that there's too much of, and can that affect what you're planting?
It can, but then it becomes very scientific, and the regular gardener, pretty much, if you add a bit of composted manure, it should give you decent result. And to not complicate everything.
No worries.
If
So
you have, oh sorry, if you also have a compost at home and your compost is well decomposed, that you don't see any elements that you added in your compost, then it's time to add it in your garden, and you can add that as well too.
awesome. So is there specific types of manure or compost that you like to use? Like, so there's obviously like mushroom manure, or there's different types, or there's the synthetic fertilizers that you can find. Is there anything you prefer to use? I mean, we are considered a conventional farm because we do use some, you know, non-organic matters, but you know, we really believe in kind of being natural and using as much organic stuff as possible. What's the kind of the differences that people might be looking for?
Mm-hmm. So what I would say is whatever is available to you. Us at the winery, we have such a large area to fertilize, so sometimes it is difficult to source locally any composted manure, and I would say it is like almost impossible.
Mm-hmm.
So we are purchasing our organic fertilizer from TerraLink, and I believe it's composted manure, composted chicken, and it's kind of pelletized and turn into little grains, and then they make the ratio according to what our soil needs. For a home gardener, you can go to your to your
Garden
to
store.
your hold on.
The garden stores or the
Yeah,
farmers?
to your garden center, yes. Or at home, what I use is my chicken manure. The chicken manure is always, it's quite high in nitrogen. You want to make sure that it got composted for a year or two, but this is definitely my favorite go-to, and that's why I have chickens, is because I love the eggs as well, but it's also for their manure. Yeah, and I add that in the fall, so it's ready in the spring.
Right. So try and add it in the fall. So don't try and add it just before, because you want time for that nitrogen to integrate with the soil.
Yeah, or because if you know it's very well composted, then in the spring it's fine to do so.
Great. Okay. So that's good for the soil. So maybe some mistakes. What are things, typical kind of rookie gardener mistakes that I might make? Things that the first couple of years you're like, you did it one way, and then you realize kind of it was actually detrimental to the garden health.
Mm. I mean, yes, there's some beginner mistake, but I would say that every year is a challenge and is a new, and you will learn something new. You will succeed in one vegetable that you failed last year because it's all about the weather. But one thing that beginner gardeners should know is it's very important to choose the right varieties that will grow in your climate. If you try to grow the same varieties that southern areas will grow, there's a chance that you will not succeed, because we have in Prince George, we have some cold climate, nights are very cold. So if you're trying to grow soya bean or corn, make sure that you take the right variety and that you really create the right climate or the right microclimate in your backyard for that. Talk to your neighbors or your gardening friends. What varieties are you growing? Then if you use the same one, you have a better chance of success in your area. Also, I see that we're always eager to start gardening in the spring, but there's lots of people that will start their seeds too early, and they don't have the capacity they don't have the space to transplant, or the lighting is not appropriate, and the the heat in their house or where they grow is not appropriate. So they get some very leggy cabbages or tomatoes, and if you don't have uh, the right growing capacity, you better to start like 4 to 6 weeks prior to planting. Then that way you won't have to transplant in bigger pots, and then you're gonna end up with a full room full of transplant, and you won't have enough space for yourself. So plant at the right time for what you can do. Yes, that's
Okay, so
another.
4 to 6 weeks before planting. So I mean, in Prince George here, everyone just kind of says May long, May long, May long. In Vancouver, probably a lot of people have already planted. What's kind of the general rule of thumb if we just take out the dates there and just say, how do we know in our specific area that this is the right time to plant, and so that we can plan backwards about 6 weeks or so for
Mhm.
our seeds?
So it's 4 to 6 weeks uh, before the last frost.
Okay.
That's when you're you're safe to start your seeds. If you're especially for sensitive plants like tomatoes and peppers, those
Mhm.
one they really don't like uh, cold temperature. And if you plant them too early, they might not die, but they are gonna stay stagnant, and they won't grow for another 3 weeks because they were so shocked once you put them outside. Um, then it's better to start a little bit later. I know you won't get tomatoes in July, but um, if you don't have a heated greenhouse, that's what you have to do if you want to grow tomatoes. Otherwise, grow beans, peas, carrots, potatoes, things that don't need to be started too early. Not at
Okay.
all.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So thinking about frost, obviously, you're looking at the temperature of your region. Does it go below zero? When is the last time that it goes below zero? I know a mistake that happens often is, you get a nice week of weather
Mhm.
and it looks like it's not going to, and then all of a sudden something happens, and if it frosts and someone's put the plants on the ground, that's never a good feeling.
Yes. So if you start with seeds, you're okay to plant peas and carrots. If there's a light frost, it's okay. The seeds are in the ground. They're not going to die. They will just take a little bit more time to germinate, but at least you didn't lose a whole crop of tomatoes or peas, let's say. Or sometimes there's some areas in Prince George that you can plant your squash directly from seeds outside. You don't need to start them from inside. So if you're in a warmer environment, start from seeds. Then that way, those seeds will know exactly when to start growing, and they won't get killed by frost.
Awesome.
Mhm.
So those are some great gardening tips there. Maybe let's just kind of turn ourselves inward a little bit right now. What do you see kind of in Canada? A lot of people are like concerned about the food supply in Canada due to COVID and stuff like that. Do you know like what are the reasons people are getting concerned? How is COVID affecting kind of farmers in Canada?
Um, Canada relies a lot on export, and that involves transportation. So if there was anything that would disrupt the transportation, we could be at risk of not having any food, especially up in the north. Um, with COVID, there's a lot of foreign workers that were supposed to come in the States and in Canada to work in the fields, especially for nurseries or for vegetable farmers. And at the moment, they cannot. They are now allowing them, but they need to be in quarantine for 2 weeks. So that will put pressure on the farmers to have all those people that they have to board for 2 weeks just to make sure that they're they don't have COVID-19, and then they'll be able to work in the field. Um, that is, and perhaps not all of them will be coming. I was hearing about 30,000 foreign workers that were supposed to come. Perhaps there's only 10,000 that will be coming up
Mm,
here. So that what farmers will do if they don't have the labor. That's going to be
It would be
uh,
interesting. So, I mean,
a
I think
challenge.
I think it's very surprising to a lot of people, the number of temporary foreign workers that come up for the jobs in the agricultural sector in Canada. And why do you think that that we do have so many temporary foreign workers versus hiring a local now? I mean, I think a lot of people are just interested in why that kind of happens.
But for us, for the winery, we're very lucky because uh, we rely on locals to come and harvest our fruits. We have a lot of students that come and pick for us every year, and we're very lucky. So for us, hopefully, but it will not affect us. We'll be okay. I think it's very hard work, and and for sometimes if you compare, if you're working in construction and so on, you're going to get a better pay. However, the rewarding, it is probably not the same than if you were working in a field. And I don't know, I've always had such a passion that being fed and working outside was my main priority. So, but there's many people right now that are looking for work, students, anybody, even not students, that I would encourage to go and work on farms if possible. And you will see how when you know what a farmer does to feed you, you have way more respect for the food that is on your table. So
I,
I
I think that's a great message. It's absolutely incredibly true. And so, in Canada, we have we obviously have a lot of people off of work right now. And this is a sector that absolutely critically needs employees coming through over the next few months. And you might just find that you fall in love and are as passionate
mhm.
about farming as Noemie is and as we are here at the winery. And I think, adding value and creating a better understanding of where, your food comes from. It doesn't just come from a bag in a drive-through. There's a lot of things that take place in order for it to get to us. So I think that's a great message and absolutely critically important. Is there anything that farmers are doing like differently? Like one of the nice things about farming is it's fairly safe in terms of like actually kind of being able to be more spaced out and stuff like that. But is there any kind of areas of concern that farmers are working on to make sure that people can work safely in the environments that they're in?
um I believe it might be more of a concern for animal farmers, especially if you have a larger facility and that you have multiple workers working inside. But for any uh, outdoor farms, vegetables or fruit farms, uh, I don't see that there would be any concern for anybody to that would stop them from working in those environments. Yeah. What we see right now is that the down the chain, because farmers are not working alone, after their animals go to slaughterhouse and packaging house, we see how right now there's a couple outbreaks and some places had to close their doors for a little bit because it's very difficult when you're working in a butchering chain to keep your distance. So that will probably impact the meat industry
Yeah,
considerably.
absolutely. Yeah, we're hearing lots of stories out there of people who are definitely struggling with that right now. So,
So
um,
for just one thing, for people that are interested in going vegetarian and vegan, it might be a good time for you to to grow your own vegetables and
yeah,
try to reduce your meat consumption. Yeah.
absolutely. And by the way, our wines are vegan friendly as well.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to give up the wine there, but you do want
Yes.
to check
Yeah.
which wines are vegan before consuming. Noemi, this has been really great. Is there anything else that maybe we haven't had a chance to cover today that you think might be interesting for the listeners out there?
I would say don't give up. there's even after 25 years of farming and gardening for myself, there's always a year that I'm going to fail at something. And this year, I'm pretty sure that my tomatoes are not going to make it. But there's always look at the bright side and look at your success. And we're all in the same, I'd say in the same boat in this. You'll have great success and great failure and never stop growing. Yes, that's what I would say. Just keep trying, and something will, after a while, after a couple years, and gardening takes a full year from start to finish, then you'll be like, oh, I have to wait another year to try something else. It's not just you try a recipe, it takes an hour, oh, I'll try it differently. No, you have to wait a full year. So it creates, or it builds up patience. That's what I would say. But please don't give up, because you will be able to find the perfect way of gardening for yourself. And yeah, it's always so rewarding when something really works. I'm still eating my potatoes from
Yeah.
last year.
Oh
So,
man. I don't think there's anything better, honestly, than the feeling when you come home and you look at your plate and everything on your plate was grown by
mm-hmm.
yourself. I mean, I think that's such a awesome feeling of pride, and you can definitely tell from the passion you have in your voice and in this talk today, Noemie, about how important it is to you. And I think that the more people do it and the more they get involved in it, the more kind of fun and excitement it is. I think gardening, farming, producing, and then adding value to the things that we do ourselves, I think is just so exciting. I mean, this has been really exciting. If people have any questions for you, they can DM us on Instagram, Facebook. How else can they get in touch with you?
They can email me at Noemie at Noemie at northernlightswinery.ca, and my name is Noemi. Yes.
Awesome. And that's on our website as well. So if you guys can't find that, just go on our website there. You can find it, or just send us a message. We can put that out there. No, I mean, this has been great. I think a couple of messages I heard from you today, which just are unbelievably important right now, especially right now, is obviously, we don't know what the food supply is going to look like, but this is a great opportunity. This is a great time for you to start planting some of your own food source. Also, work with your garden centers. They're a tremendous knowledge base in every community. Try and make things easy on yourself. Don't go overboard. If possible, get some of the luxuries like the irrigation and stuff like that, which just make a big difference to your life. And then also, I think considering employment opportunities in the farming industry would be a great thing. All across Canada, we need farmers right now more than ever, and that could be a new career path for you if maybe you started going down that path and then find that you really love it. For everybody out there, this just like the windows behind me, there is a light at the end of this tunnel. This is a tremendous opportunity for us to start getting involved in new things, learning new skills. I think those things are going to take us forward into the next 10, 20 years of our lives in a really positive way. So thank you very much, everybody. And we'll see you next time.